All right. Welcome to our next presentation from the Wrestling Mindset Virtual Coaches Clinic. Had a ton of great presenters so far. I want to thank all of you that have stuck it out with us the entire day, but also thank those of you that are tuning in for your first presentation. The man that I got here to present doesn't need a ton of introduction, but for those of you that don't know, he's Team USA's Greco Olympic coach. So he's leading our Greco team year after year at the World Championships and at the Olympic Championships. As a competitor himself, he's a silver medalist in both the World Championships and in the Olympics, and is one of the OGs of UFC. Has been around the block a long time, done a bunch of different cool stuff, impacted a lot of young people in our country for years in the past, and looking to do it for years coming in the future. At the end of the session, we'll have about 5 minutes. We'll do some Q&A. So if you want to throw some questions in the Q&A feature, we'll feed those to Coach here at the end. Currently, we are at 1825 as far as donations driven for Beat the Streets Wrestling. It's a big organization that we at Mindset try to support year after year. Our goal today is try to finish the day with 2,500. So if you haven't had a chance to donate yet, jump on the website and go ahead and see if you can throw some money in there so that we can help grow the sport of wrestling in some of those inner city urban areas that in the past haven't really had programs that have been able to impact people and bring them into our sport that we love. So without further ado, Coach Lindland, I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Great introduction. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate you guys having me on. I tell you what, I did this last year, and I was during the middle of the pandemic, and I got reached out to about doing this. And honestly, I can't tell you what I spoke about. So hopefully you got a tape from last year, and you could send me that, because I was going through a lot of struggle, as we all were in 2020, the pandemic, and then I was dealing with cancer treatment at the same time. So I was going through a lot of struggle there, and and I think a lot of you are probably going, aren't you busy right now? And you're going to the games in 10 days, and you guys start competing in 24 days, but we're tapering down. Right now, I've just finished up our last Olympic camp in Atlanta, Georgia, with the entire Olympic team. We cut the guys loose July 1, sent them home for the holidays with their family, and they're training with their personal coaches now, and starting back up on the 5th of July up until we leave on the 17th. So I'm working with one athlete specifically right now. So it's kind of like fight camp, where I got Hancock here in town that we're prepping over at the Air Force Academy. So we're very thankful to Coach Barber for allowing us to use his facility. And my talk today is coaching with a father's heart. And I'd been coaching for a while. I started coaching right out of college. I moved back to Oregon and coached at my club, and then was invited to be a resident athlete at the Olympic Training Center. And I went out there because of Mike Hauk, who was a coach who had a father's heart. He cared for his athletes, loved his athletes. And after a couple of years, well, it wasn't even a couple of years, I think I was there for about a year, and Mike ended up resigning, and we had a new coach come in, and I stayed there for a while, and ended up moving out to Nebraska to take a coaching job at the University of Nebraska, while I was competing on world teams and Olympic teams. And right after the games, I won a silver medal in Sydney in 2000. And right after the games, I moved back to Oregon again, started the gym, and started fighting professionally. I couldn't imagine doing this job now if I had young children, because of just the demands on time and how much demands your children need, and how much they need a father there with them. And so, I was thinking a lot about this, and this talk is kind of based on an article I wrote on 5-Point Move. So if somebody wants to go look that up, just Google 5-Point Move, coaching with a father's heart, and you can read the original article that this was about. But I'd written that article, and Tim had asked me to, he said, what does it mean to be coaching with a father's heart? And for me, it just really means being a servant of Christ, and to share his news and his love with his people. And sometimes that love can be a hug. Sometimes it could be a boot in someone's ass if they need it. But, helping loving your athletes like you love your children. I mean, I don't know how many of you out there are fathers, but think about the way you love your children. You would do anything for them. You'd sacrifice for them. You'd ultimately give your life for them, like Christ gave his life for us. And really, that's what it comes down to. And I felt like in this season of my life, I'm 51 years old. My children are grown, although my daughter did just move to Colorado. She um, ended up not getting married. She was engaged. She ended up not getting married, moved out here, got a nursing degree, and just found a job. And she's just living with us for, a few months till she figures out this new job, and finds her own place, because ultimately, just like parenting, you want to get your own kids ready to go out in life on their own. And just like on coaching, you want your athletes to be their own best coach. You want to coach them up, you want to train them up right, but you want them to start to figure out what they need and how to get that on their own, as much as you want to be there and support them. And so it's really just kind of about loving your athletes like you love your children. And that's really what coaching with a father's heart is. And in this talk, you want what's best for your children. You want what's best for your athletes. And as a coach, your responsibility is to serve to be a blessing to your athletes. And the coach athlete relationship should never be a transactional relationship. And I mean, how many of us have seen fathers that at these kids tournaments that it's like they don't talk to their kid, or they scream at them, or it's not love. It's performance based, or it's transactional. And we see that a lot with coaches. And I don't want to be that kind of coach. I want to be the kind of coach that knows that his athletes know that I'm proud of them, I love them, and I affirm them, and I'm there to support them. And that means loving like Christ, and showing grace, and really understanding what the father's heart is. And there's 8 things you get from a father. And if any of you are taking notes, I'm gonna go ahead and list these 8 things, and then I'll go through those. And I got about another 12 minutes, and then we'll leave it open for questions. But 8 things you get from a father is first of all, authority. The second one is identity. Third is security, generosity, maturity, family, resiliency, and a destiny. And when we're talking about authority, of course, a father, and I'm going to kind of intertwine these when I talk about being a coach and being a father, because what the talk is about is coaching with the father's heart. So if I say father when I mean coach, forgive me, and just understand that I'm kind of just talking this through a little bit. But honor and authority it's relationship first, and you have to connect before you can correct with your athletes. So it's all about building those relationships. And authority is structure. It's rules to live by. It's consequences. It's structure. It's discipline. And our guys are going to make mistakes. They're young men. And that's another thing is that I'm so blessed that I get to coach men. I get to coach young men. And I so often hear other coaches refer to their athletes as children or kids or something like that. And I understand that that's loving and fatherly, but I want guys to grow up and be responsible adults and men. And so I want to treat them like men. And I either refer to my athletes as wrestlers or athletes or young men. But they also understand authority is you're the boss, the dad's the boss. And sometimes your kids start to think that maybe they're the boss, especially when they become teenagers and they start getting in their teenage years and they start pushing back on your authority a little bit. And sometimes it's subtle reminders, and sometimes it's a little more of an authoritative reminder. But the father is the authority, but he's there out of love, and he wants to guide you and just move you forward in your career, in your life, just like your father, like a father should. And a lot of our athletes have these father wounds where maybe they didn't have a good dad, or maybe their dad walked down on them. I think it's the numbers are staggering right now that we're seeing, depression and suicide rise, not just because of this pandemic, but because the kids in these days don't feel like they have a father there, or a lot of times they don't have a father. And some of the athletes that I have the privilege of coaching at the national team, grew up without that kind of a father. So father also gives you an identity, and that identity should come from the love of Christ. You're either a son or you're a slave, and that goes back to that transactional kind of thing. Are you doing what I want? Are you getting the results, or are you here because you want to do this and I just want to guide you through it? So we a lot of times we we love a nickname. Sometimes, it's like, my daughter's Twig, and my son's Buddy Dude. And, it's the ones we love, and then the ones we want to curse, and we want to be a blessing to the athletes that we leave. And, a boy is under authority until he's mature, and he becomes in authority. And so we want him to understand what authority looks like. And authority is not about who, I'm I'm in charge, I'm the boss, listen to me. It's relational. It has nothing to do with performance. It's all about building that relationship. And so if you want to build that relationship, you got to grow that. You got to connect with your athletes before you have the right, and before they certainly feel like you can coach them up. So it's all about building that relationship. And the father, the devil can be a father. I mean, he is a father. The Bible talks about he's the father of lies. And so you can be a good father or you can be a bad father. And obviously I am talking about being a good father, and using the example of God the Father, Christ, the Holy Spirit. You also get security. That was the third thing on our list. You either have fear or you have a father. And if you know that your coach loves you, your father loves you, you have security, you can go out and perform with freedom, with total liberty and freedom, because you know that it's not based on your performance. No matter how I do, I'm going to have that security of being loved. And when it comes to being there as a father, you just want to be first in line. Just think about your kids. Like, sometimes they get all like frustrated with you, and they're like, they're upset, they're mad, and you're like, do you understand? Like, I am here for you first and foremost. If there's anybody on this planet that is going to be here for you, it's me. I'm your biggest fan. I love you. I care about you. I want what's best for you in life. And that's kind of the same thing I'm talking about with my athletes, is building that relationship so strong and those bonds so tight that they understand that I only want what's best for you. I'm telling you this, and we look at especially the Old Testament, and like all these rules. And then Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment of all? And it's like, love your God and love your neighbors, love people, love others, love your God. And that's really what it comes down to, is that security. A master, he wants results. A performance-based coach wants results. And those dads that we were talking about at the kids tournaments, they want results. But a father, he wants influence in a relationship. He wants to build that relationship lovingly, so you can get what you're wanting out of that as an athlete. The the other thing that a father gives you is generosity. He's generous with his time, his resources, his energy, his attention, his love, his affections, his blessings, and certainly grace. So we want to be generous, and we want to be there for them. I am here for you. So, and a lot of times our athletes push back on us. They don't want to be there. Sometimes, it's like, hey, I want to spend time with you, and they'll push back. I mean, I have those situations all the time with athletes, and a lot of them are these father wounds that I talked about a little earlier, is that they don't understand the love of the Father, maybe because they don't understand the love of Jesus and what he did for us, because they're associating that in their brain with their own fathers. And my own father wasn't there for me, so how can you be there for me as your coach? But really just sharing that. And we also want our kids and our athletes to mature. who doesn't want their sons or daughters to grow up and be successful, live happy, productive lives, and in wrestling, I think we call this mental toughness. And this is a mindset that we're always pushing through, but it is that growth and that maturity. And that doesn't come without a lot of sacrifice, a lot of struggle. And too often, and I've said this before when I talk, we talk about these helicopter parents that try to, they come in when trouble shows up and they want to fix everything instead of being there and walking their son or their daughter through that struggle and through that tough time and that adversity. And I feel like that's what we need to do with our athletes as well. As we just need to be there, because life is a struggle. I mean, it is a metaphor for life is wrestling, and we're on a wrestling mindset call right now. So I'm talking to you guys about that kind of struggle that we're walking through. And who doesn't want to, we don't want to watch our kids struggle. We don't want to watch our athletes struggle, but they need that struggle to mature and grow in wisdom and skills and abilities. And so if you don't lead your child in a positive, loving way, I guarantee, somebody else will lead them in a negative way. They're going to get led by culture or the wrong influences, the wrong friends, whatever. We also give them a family, and we know that from being coaches, the wrestling family. And as coaches, we need to be there to build men up and not beat them up, and make them feel loved and a part of that family. Because again, we're dealing with a generation of broken young men because of this father wound. And the next thing is resiliency. We think about that dad that that mine didn't. He wasn't like, get up, go to practice. I did that on my own because that's what I wanted to do. But sometimes, if we know that that's important to our children, we want to get them up. We want to get them to practice, even though they're like, man, I'd rather just stay home and play a game today or whatever. But, character comes through, the school hardship sometimes. And there's no way to grow without that suffering, which we talked about a little earlier. And, it's just those 8 things, I think, is what really coaching with a father's heart is. I listened to Brandon's talk about heart of a leader, and I kind of thought that might tie in. And Brandon and I got a chance to spend some years together while he was at USA Wrestling. I heard, why he left, and it was about the commitment of time, and he was going to be away from his children and his wife, the most important people in his life. And so he chose this other job. And I think that makes sense, because I would have never chose the job I'm in right now if my children weren't adults. And your legacy is defined by the way you lead, love, and live every day. Lead boldly, deeply, and live courageously. And I'm going to leave you with an acronym. So we want to make an impact, and that is identify moments of positive affirmation in your child's life. And that could go for your child or your athlete if you choose to lead with the father's heart. So that was kind of my talk for today. And I'm just thankful that I was asked to come back on, Jake, and must have done all right last year, even though I don't remember what I even talked about. But thank you for listening, and thank you for having me back.
No, of course. Always love to hear, from the guy that's probably doing more to lead our Greco efforts as a country than anybody else, or at least as far as the upfront man when it comes to, international competition at the senior level. And last year, you talked about how to become a well-rounded martial artist and Greco-Roman and the road less traveled, and kind of talked about wrestling as a martial art and, the need for all, like, the crossover between those different styles and how it was impactful for everybody in their growth to kind of be part of all of them, which, I think is a great way to look at our sport. I think too often that we forget that whether it's folk style, Greco, or freestyle, this is the American martial art. This is what we have in our country that teaches discipline, that teaches life lessons. And, I love the way that this ties into that exact thing. I think that's great.
Well, thank you. Because like I said, I was dealing with some difficult times, last year around the same time. And I had just, I was just getting ready to leave my cabin and head back to Colorado Springs to start a training camp for myself, because I was going to get ready to go through some cancer radiation treatment. And I put together, I knew how to fight. I knew how to prepare for a fight, and I knew I was up for a fight. And so I put together an 8-week training camp for myself using jujitsu to prepare for that. And I continued to train all the way through that treatment. And even since I've recovered and come through that. And just so everybody knows, I'm on the other side of that. My numbers are back down. I'm doing great. Life is good. I feel very blessed.
Yeah, and two of the people that we're remembering during this is Matt Eveleth, who is a teammate of mine and the Zanetti's at UPenn, who's right now he's fighting cancer, and then also Don Ernst, who was a coach for both Gene and Jeff, and they've known for years is battling cancer as well. And there's a lot of people. I mean, that's something that touches a lot of lives, and a lot of us either struggle with personally ourselves, or like at some point, or a close family member deals with. It's pretty ubiquitous that the touch that has on different individuals.
Yeah, and being a martial artist my whole life, and competing into my 40s, you think you're invincible, and then when I hit about 42 and my body started slowing down, and my mind was always still there, and I was like, I can still do this, and my body just didn't respond and react with the same timing. And I took some punches, I got choked out, and I was like, you know what, I need to start looking at a new career. And when I started looking at that, I got offered a really great job in Moscow, coaching martial artists and MMA fighters. And my wife wasn't too excited, even though our daughter was out of the house and in college, our youngest. She was just, it was going to be too far away from our kids being in Moscow. And she just said, well, let's look at something else. And then this opportunity to coach the U.S. national team came up. And I mean, that was just a prayer answered. I was like, wait, maybe I should look at that. And my wife was like, absolutely, we like Colorado. We lived there for 3.5 years, and we should look at that option.
I know that's awesome. That it sounds like it would have been a cool opportunity in Russia, but like many people, we always have opportunities that come if we're open to them, and if we're looking for them, and if we're continuing to build ourselves. But change tack, I want to jump into some questions, and I guess I want to start off with a little bit about mindset. A couple years ago, I believe it was 2017, I had the opportunity to work with the Greco World guys before they went over to Kazakhstan. It might have been Kazakhstan that year. I may be
Yeah, I
mistaken.
think it was. That was Kazakhstan was in 19.
But why do you think it is that even at the senior level, mindset training is important, or how is that something that's impactful for wrestlers at all level to focus on the mental side of the sport like mindset does?
Well, I think it's mind, body, spirit, soul. I mean, I think you got to have a good, a good, well-rounded, present. I mean, you've got to understand, physically you're prepared, mentally you're prepared, and spiritually you're prepared. And I think that the mindset is one of those three pillars that, if we don't have the right mindset going into competition, that it's the same thing as not training properly going into training, or not having the right nutrition, or, not having the right weight management, strength program. I mean, all those components combined, especially at the senior level. We're looking at, I think people look at the senior athletes and go, oh, these guys are so much more advanced or so much more technical. Really, they're much more focused on the fundamentals. And the mindset training is one of the fundamental pillars of success. You got to have the right mindset. And that takes, time to develop. And so it's always great to have somebody come in and just kind of walk us through that stuff again, go over the basics. We didn't cover anything earth shattering, Jake. We walk the guys through the basics, have a plan, know what your warm-up routine is, know what your game match plan is, have a cool down protocol, have a weight management protocol. Are we writing those things down? And are we doing them? And, I think a lot of times we're like, I know that, but we don't write it down. And I think those are failings on our athletes' part, where they're just not, they're making those mistakes. And then, they're going to learn. And hopefully, like I said, we're going to see them struggle if they don't learn that. And we can maybe use that as an example to guide them and correct them next time. But we want them to have success right now. They want to have success right now. So we want to get that information to them. We want to put it in front of them and know that it's available. And thank you for coming out and sharing with our athletes.
Of course, yeah, it's our pleasure to be able to assist those guys. And one of the ways we always look at it, I think too often when we go into situations, we go in thinking, I know this. And one of the ways that I know I've tried to apply myself and try to with anybody I work with is the question we should be asking if we're seeing something that we feel like maybe we already know or we're already strong is, how well do I actually apply it? Right? It's one thing to know something and it's another to apply it on a consistent daily basis. Whether it's, the young kid at a camp, seeing high C for the from the 20th coach, that doesn't mean that you're applying it correctly. And if we look at it like that, there's always more to learn and not let ourselves get caught up in that ego moment of I know it, so I don't need to pay attention.
Well, and that was kind of like me tuning into, I got to listen to Coach Buxton and Brandon Slay this morning, Coach Gable. I'm always looking to learn more as well. But Coach Slay, he said, wisdom is the application of knowledge. I may know it, but am I actually applying that? And I think that's what you're referring to.
Yep.
And I don't know if you got to hear Coach Slay's talk, but it was really good. It was the heart of a leader, and I've got a page of notes and took all those notes down. But the biggest takeaway I got was that wisdom. And now I'm 50 and my 51, my wife's 50. I see a lot more wisdom in her, and hopefully I'm espousing more wisdom as well, and I'm applying all that information that I've learned over the years from my mentors and coaches that have poured into me that did coach with a father's heart. And I'm very blessed. I had so many wonderful coaches, and I had a few that I learned what not to do from as well. We were talking about those transactional coaches versus relational coaches, and I'm just based on the way I was coached, I want to be a relational coach. I want to be somebody that my athletes know they can count on. I'm there for them first, and I'm going to build that relationship. You've got to connect before you can correct. And if you don't have that relationship, you're not connecting.
Yeah, no, and to speak on that, just for the attendees, one of the conversations that Coach Lindland and I had, when I was working with the team, was about the emphasis on wrestling is not everything. As far as when you're an athlete, if your only focus in life is just wrestling, and that is the only thing that defines you, and that's the only thing you identify as, it causes a lot of problems with you as an athlete and then with you later on. And the importance of, if you're a coach, developing athletes to realize you may be great at wrestling, it may be important to you, but you need to be bigger than just the sport. And that's not just something that helps you as an individual, that helps you be a better wrestler. If you hear guys like Kyle Snyder talk about like a loss, I know when he got beat by Sadulayev in the World Championships, he got interviewed right afterwards. And I think the question was how does this loss define your career? And I loved his answer. This loss does not define me. And, for him, it's his relationship with Jesus Christ, right? And like this importance that I love that Coach Lindland puts with his athletes on, identify as more than just a wrestler. And this is not the whole of who you are. How you perform is not who you are, which allows those athletes to go compete at a really high level.
Well, Jake, I don't think I was an awful coach before. I had, NCAA champions, All-Americans, world champions, and Olympic team members that I've coached, guys, that I've coached, in the UFC that have won titles. But I feel like, at that time in my life, I didn't have the maturity and wisdom that I was coaching in a loving way that I knew how to coach, but I felt like I was coaching more like a big brother. Like I could still beat them up. I can still get on the mat and train with them. And when I came to the realization that maybe I should start grabbing cadets and juniors and maybe even not so many juniors because they're getting pretty darn tough as well, that I needed to maybe shift that brotherly love to a fatherly love. And that this just kind of made a difference in the way I coach now.
Yeah, and I do think it's one, we should all continue to grow in as leaders, and then two, there's different stages, and our roles change over time, and not being stuck with this is who I have to be forever, but that role may change. And that's when I first started coaching, I viewed myself very similar. I was the big brother, I was like the young cool uncle, and not that I'm, that much removed from when I started. It's only been about 10 years, but view myself in a slightly different way and like allow some of the other young coaches to fill that role. I got two quick things before we finish up, Coach. Randy Cruz asks, do you coach girls slightly different than boys, or is there some, minor approaches that are different when you're working with females versus males?
Well, I don't coach a lot of girls now because I focus on senior Greco-Roman, which only has a male discipline. But yeah, I mean, girls just like daughters, and coaching with a father's heart. They want to be appropriately hugged and loved, and they want affection differently than men do. And it's more of this kind of face to face talking than when we're with guys. It's a lot of shoulder to shoulder. When I'm with my best friends, we're fishing, we're rafting, and everything is this shoulder to shoulder relationship. Like we're doing this together. And when you're working with women, it in any capacity, coaching or whatever, it is more face to face. Let's sit down, let's have a meal, let's converse. You do that with men, they start pushing back. You're like, hey, let's go rafting, let's go hiking. We're shoulder to shoulder. We're doing this together, but we're not face to face. And so I just think about that when you're coaching men versus women. It's love, it's affection, but it's a little different, and it's more face to face than shoulder to shoulder.
That's a really good way to look at that. I really like that, Coach. I'm stealing that.
And like I was thinking about, like my relationship with my father. It was like we were shoulder to shoulder under the hood of his car, or side by side on horseback, or whatever the activity was. It was that shoulder to shoulder. Not as much with my mom. It was more this face to face. Let's have a conversation.
All right. Well, perfect. And last thing, I got a couple requests for just a repeat of the 8 aspects of fatherhood. I'm sure they're taking notes.
You got it. I will get them down. So I got them right here. 8 things you get from a father: authority, identity, security, generosity, maturity, family, resiliency, and a destiny.
All right. That sounds like something we're going to be putting out probably in a graphic form with Coach Lindland's face, and then those eight up. That's great, or 8 great aspects of being a father. Great 8 aspects for a leader to try to fill that role. Well, Coach Lindland, we really appreciate you being on. We always appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge. You have so much to share and offer the community. In closing, is there anything that attendees could do to support Greco-Roman wrestling, or just?
Yeah, you can always go right to our page, themat.com, USA Wrestling. .org, and you can make a direct contribution to the Greco-Roman program. And if you click Greco-Roman, it does go directly to our program. And we're kind of the afterthought when it comes to wrestling in the United States. It's folk style, then freestyle, and then women is really cool and hip to be behind right now, because they got an incredible program, incredible team and leadership in their programs. But Greco always could use a little support and help. And if you're on the USA Wrestling page, become a member of USA Wrestling, because there's so many great benefits to being a member. We're after the pandemic, they're talking about, raising the card prices, which is like, why not? Inflation is going up. We haven't changed our card prices. We haven't changed our national team stipend pay for years. Our athletes are making the same thing now as I was making as a national team member. So we're always needing more support and love from the community. So anytime somebody's going about, thinking about making a donation to USA Wrestling, click Greco, share that love with our team.
All right. Yep. So everybody, you heard it from himself, Coach Lindland. Coach, again, appreciate you coming on. You have a great evening.
My pleasure.
Crush them at the Olympics, man. Let's go get this done.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk later.
Yep. Talk to you soon.